Hello YouTube and people of the interwebs, welcome back to another Doctor Who video. Today I'm going to be discussing quite the interesting topic, the Christmas specials that you will never see. Now, that may be because some of the episodes are lost. They aired on TV years ago, but they're part of the many missing lost pieces of media from Doctor Who history. Or they're episodes that simply never got made and were cancelled before they could even properly go into production. Or there's a really bizarre, almost Harry Potter Doctor Who crossover that thankfully was vetoed by David Tennant. Thank you, David. But join me in this video as I discuss the lost and deleted. Deleted? I'm not a Cyberman. The lost and cancelled Doctor Who Christmas specials. Now, for our first Doctor Who special, let me cast your minds back to 2011. Matt Smith is the current Doctor. Series 6 is just finished, I think. What a shambles. What's fascinating about this special is that it would have seen the return of none other than Tom Baker himself. Technically, I'm cheating with this one because it's not a Doctor Who Christmas special, it's a Sarah Jane Adventures Christmas special, which is it's within the Whoniverse, so it still counts. For those of you who don't know, which I'm assuming is probably about 3 people, because you've got to be a Doctor Who fan to watch this channel, I'd imagine, the Sarah Jane Adventures is the spin-off show that aired on CBBC from around 2007 until the sad passing of Elizabeth Sladen in around 2011. This Christmas special, which, would have been the first Sarah Jane Adventures Christmas episode, would have been called A Miracle on Bannerman Road. For those of you who never watched the Sarah Jane Adventures, Bannerman Road is, 13 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lives, and it's home to things way beyond your imagination. There's an extraterrestrial computer in the wall, boy genius in the attic, and I can't remember the rest of the intro, but it's great. This episode probably kind of got scrapped because it was an adaptation of A Christmas Carol, which obviously the actual main show, Doctor Who, ended up doing anyway, so it would have been a little bit strange to have 2 Christmas Carol adaptations. This episode would have seen Sarah Jane witness the future, the past, and the present of her weird alien hunting life, shown and directed by a strange time traveller. This is where Tom Baker comes in. Tom Baker was considered for playing this role of, I guess, the 3 ghosts. The ghost of Christmas future, past and present. Tom Baker would have been the ghosts in A Christmas Carol for Sarah Jane. I mean, it's such a shame this episode never got made. That's such a good idea. Parts of this original script were then recycled for the next series of Sarah Jane Adventures. The whole plotline with Sarah Jane getting her new child Sky, rather than Sky just appearing on the doorstep in episode 1 of series 5, the 11th Doctor was actually going to show up at the end, because he was like the future of this Christmas Carol adaptation. He was going to show up at the end of the episode with Sky as a baby, hand her over to Sarah Jane and be like, I can't explain what's happening now. Well, it's Matt Smith, so I was about to say I need to flap my hands around, but I feel like I've been doing that throughout this video anyway, so apologies to all of you random people that always tell me off for flapping my hands around too much in my videos. It's not going to stop me. The 11th Doctor would have come in, given Sarah Jane her new child and said, I'll explain later, and she would have then been left to unravel the mystery of Sky, which obviously in the Series 5 finale, which sadly they never got to make, that was going to be called The Battle of Bannerman Road, and Sky was going to be revealed to be the trickster's daughter, and there was going to be chaos, and Bannerman Road was going to get blown up, but that's for another video. If you want that video, it is coming to the channel in the near future. That's our first Christmas special, and I think that's such a cool concept. I mean, yeah, it stopped in development, which is a shame. They never actually got to go through with it, but let me know in the comments whether you'd like to have seen that, because I certainly would. Now, the next one, Russell, what were you thinking, man? Well, to be fair, we know what he was thinking because of his fantastic book, The Writer's Tale. Russell originally considered to get JK Rowling in to write an episode, but sadly that fell through. A couple of years later, after Voyage of the Damned, Russell says here he wanted more star power, and at the time, who was the only person sort of more famous than Kylie Minogue within reach of the BBC, that was JK Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, which obviously contextually at the time was an insane hit. I mean, it still is today. JK Rowling has ruined her legacy with her dodgy comments on Twitter. If you don't know about that, just give it some research. Yeah, she's a very controversial, contentious figure. So it is kind of lucky that this didn't end up happening, otherwise that episode would have aged like milk. Russell wanted this episode to be a world of magic made real. That would be glorious, and I kind of get the thinking for that, to be fair, because David Tennant's 10th Doctor, especially in episodes like the Shakespeare Code, is so like, no, magic doesn't exist, but to see the 10th Doctor faced with magic actually happening, that would be pretty cool. Also, obviously Russell has the showrunner brain, and he is right. At the time, it would have pulled in insane viewing figures to have the title credits be like, David Tennant, JK Rowling. Here's a very interesting passage from his book, which I'll read because it sort of gives a little rough synopsis of how the episode would have played out. Imagine it, a cold Edinburgh Christmas Eve. JK Rowling walking through the snow, pursued by a journalist. What are you going to write after Harry Potter, the difficult second album? Later, JK sits down to write. At the same time, a space bug, maybe the same one as Donna's time-psych creature from 4.11, which obviously that's the episode Turn Left, where the weird little beetle climbs on Donna's back, probably put there by Rita Skeeter-type journalists, leaps onto her back. Zap! JK's imagination becomes real. A world of Victorian magic replaces the real one. That's a cool idea for 2008, and until you start to think about the practicalities of it. David Tennant was right, and he did come in clutch here and save us from this episode by saying, no, it sounds like a parody. David Tennant was reportedly really against the idea, and Russell respected him and kind of thought about it and went, maybe not. And yeah, as I say, that was probably for the better. But it is kind of mad that Harry Potter and Doctor Who almost had a crossover. I mean, Russell also talks in his book about a possible Star Trek and Doctor Who crossover, but once again, I'll save that for another future video, possibly, if this video goes down well. Our next missing episode is actually a missing episode. This one did get entirely filmed and made it live to broadcast on Christmas Day of 1964. Right in the middle of Doctor Who's biggest missing episode, well, missing episodes, missing serial, The Daleks' Master Plan. They had this bizarre little episode that happened to air on Christmas Day. They didn't want to interrupt the main big, I think it's like a 12-part epic, with the Daleks, which were like big ratings pullers at the time. I mean, they still are. But they didn't want to interrupt it. So what they did is they just created a completely separate episode called The Feast of Stephen, which ended up as this weird little add-on, which didn't really need to be there at all. And for later releases of these episodes, like when they sent them overseas to be broadcast on overseas networks and channels, they just removed and deleted this episode from the Daleks' Master Plan because, well, it was probably crap. I mean, it's bizarre because also the first Doctor in this episode, it's kind of infamous for this. Sadly, the footage doesn't survive, but the pictures of it do. He addresses the camera directly and just goes, "And a Merry Christmas to all of you at home," which is the most un-Doctor Who-y thing to ever Doctor Who. In saying that, we have just had the Star Beast, which started with "Once upon a time, Lord." The only part of the Star Beast that I just thought was, what was that intro? That was technically Doctor Who's first ever Christmas episode. There were episodes that aired like the year before close to Christmas, because obviously the show started in November, but they weren't Christmas themed. This was a proper Christmas special. And sadly, it's also the least likely to ever be found. I mean, yeah, as I say, it wasn't really sent anywhere else. It was probably scrapped, burnt and destroyed. So RIP, The Feast of Stephen. Gone, but not forgotten. Our next and final entry is technically not a Christmas special. It's a New Year's special from the wonderful Chris Chibnall, which never got made. Now, this is weird because this is like recent history, but Chibnall recently talked in a podcast about how Eve of the Daleks was only written in about 2 or 3 weeks because it was a complete backup plan, a complete panic episode, which you can kind of tell, because their original plan for that year's New Year's special had to be scrapped. Originally, the 13th Doctor was only going to have 2 specials, the New Year special and then her regeneration special at Easter. However, because of the 100-year celebration, the centenary anniversary of the BBC asked Chris Chibnall to do an extra episode. They'd give him more money, more budget, more time to do one final big bombastic goodbye to the 13th Doctor. Thus, he had to improvise an Easter episode right in the middle. And I'm sure in years it'll come out, but there's so many production troubles on Legend of the Sea Devils, which we don't currently know. But this meant that the New Year special, which originally tied directly into Jodie's final episode, had to be reworked. They also didn't have the money or the budget to do what Chris originally wanted, and working with COVID at the time, everything had to be shifted around. All we really know about the original synopsis for this episode is that it was going to be the first sort of the pre-credit sequence to Power of the Doctor, but a full episode. It was going to be set on that big bullet train that the Doctor, Dan and Yaz go to. There was going to be the Cybermasters there, possibly the Master showing up at the end, and that was going to be the big cliffhanger leading into Jodie's final story. The events of the episode would have basically played out how they did in Power of the Doctor, but longer and with more characters, and I say more characters, it's Chibnall, so probably hundreds more random characters and a dog. But yeah, that's all we ever really knew about this non-existent New Year special, and that does bring us to the end of today's video. If you did enjoy, please do remember to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know about other videos you'd like me to make in the future, or if you'd like me to make a part 2, because I'm sure if I dig enough, there'll be other weird Christmas episodes which were never made or scrapped or lost. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.